Hello, everyone, and welcome back to what is surely going to be a week in America. It's Monday. I'm joined by Francesca Fiorentini. Welcome to the show, Francesca.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Glad to have you here. Great day for you to join the show. That was, we're going to go into it, a whole bunch of different aspects of what happened at the weekend, but I've never seen a weekend like that in my life.
No, especially the trying to get into Gucci and loot it. That I've never seen.
Mm-hmm. I found that to be the most offensive part of the weekend.
Oh, for sure.
And we'll be focusing our attention on today's show on chastising
on luxury brands that have been defiled.
Exactly.
I'm starting a whole new blog about this.
Exactly.
A subreddit.
What are you going to call it?
I think I'm going to call it Looted Vuitton.
Oh, that was pretty good and right off the bat. That's why she's a professional, people.
Monday.
Anyway, okay, so first edition of Looted Vuitton will be on the Damage Report today. So thank you everybody who's joining us. We're going to be talking about what happened over the weekend, and I'm just going to say we're going to focus on the parts that matter, okay? Now, you might have been watching the news all morning and finding a whole bunch of, tutting about what some individuals who are not vested with the power of life and death by the state, what they have done. We're gonna focus on what really happened this weekend and what is likely to happen this week, because we do have some indication of that as well. For those of you who are already joining the chat and the stream, thank you for doing that. Please hit the like button if you haven't already, so that people know what's going on. If you want to chat along, if you want to tweet us at hashtag TDR Live, if you're on Twitch and want to leave a comment or send a super chat, we are here with you today, and we're gonna work through some of this, because this is an important moment, hopefully, of growth for America, and those moments are not always easy, and they don't have to be. So I'm just gonna say that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Francesca, why don't we launch into it?
Do it.
Okay. So, if you were following along with protests happening in cities across America, and in fact around the world, there were international protests I saw in Berlin and in France and in the UK and probably many other places as well, you probably noticed that videos started coming out of police brutalizing protesters, in some cases clear instances of attempted murder. And in normal times, which these are not, any one of those videos would be something we would focus on this show to push back against injustice and state violence. We could do the next 6 months of shows on those videos, and so we've been put in a position where we can't focus on all of them. But thankfully, friend of the show, Jordan Yule, he put out a call for videos of this sort on a tweet. And that thread reached the thousands of replies of people sending him these sorts of material. He put together a mashup, and I want to share that with you now.
We got plenty of time here.
Are you okay?
I'm getting shot! I'm getting...
Katie, are you okay?
Get the Get the
He's not doing anything! He's...
So that's just the section that Jordan was able to cut down to 2 minutes, because that's the limit of what a video can be on Twitter. That could be hours long, and it shows cops. I saw a comment asking, where is this? Everywhere, all over the country, every city. There are some places where I've seen cops, sitting down with protesters and things like that. That's great. But the majority of the interactions appeared to be cops going out of their way to brutalize people. In many cases, just walking away, doing what they had been ordered to do. There's a video of an old man with a cane who's just walking down the street, and a cop runs up and knocks him down. I don't even think he was involved in the protest. It was just some old man who happened to be on the street. And videos like this are everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it is a galvanizing moment. I think a lot of people who listen and watch to your show and TYT maybe were out protesting, and chances are you were part of the largely and predominantly peaceful protest. That means unarmed, not lighting fires, with signs. And what police do is they say that's not okay. If you can't exercise your First Amendment right if you are talking about Black human rights or income inequality or housing or any of the other issues that affect working class people. That's not okay. You will be corralled. You'll be maced. There was a child in Seattle who was maced to the face.
Yeah.
This is what a police state looks like. And I'm sorry, but we have one. And you will find that out very quickly when you take your outrage to the streets and you actually try to exercise, again, your First Amendment right, and you find that it is cut off, that it is brutalized, that it is shut down with the full force of a militarized police and a machinery that we haven't seen in 3 months leap to the defense of anyone when it comes to the pandemic,
Yep.
when it comes to our economic rights and the fact that we're all struggling right now. And it's a politicizing moment. I would just say to everybody, like, as sad and horrible as it is, this is a moment for all of us. Let's sort of savor this. Let's write, talk, think, plan. This is that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, look, some people, again, it's that classic thing, the devotion and attachment to tranquility rather than, an actual positive peace that's equally distributed across the population. Some people are going to tut about the fact that these people aren't, I was going to say like peaceful, like just kneeling, but of course they try to do that and they were disregarded and attacked brutally. Lives were destroyed literally over that. And so some people will say that and say, why does this stuff have to be violent? And here's the thing. I mean, we showed you the violence. The violence almost universally was the cops. It's the people with all of the power going out of their way to attack people, using clubs, using their non-lethal or less lethal weapons, which we'll get into that. Or the most common thing, we could have put together a montage just of this, just driving over people. Because if they have been trained that apparently if you're a cop in your car and people briefly inconvenience you by being in the path, you get to just run over them. I saw cop cars going over people in cities across the country, and it just sickens me that you can have news shows. Like, I understand our standards for like Fox and Friends should be basically nothing. On Fox and Friends this morning, there were 0 mentions of police violence at these protests. How do you have a show that pretends to care about reality, and that, by the way, is critical of executive power when a Democrat is in charge, that all of a sudden cops just brutalizing people, stomping them in the streets to pretend that doesn't matter and that it didn't happen?
And proving their case. I mean, the brilliant and ridiculously ironic thing about these protests is that they're about George Floyd's murder, right? And they're about excessive force from police. And so what do to respond to that cry for stopping police violence? More police violence.
Yeah.
So it's this self-defeating industry, and it's really shameful. And it is shameful, again, that it takes violence or, instigated by police, a broken window, to get national news coverage for 48 hours or more straight, when we should be talking about police brutality and violence against Black Americans every single week, every single day. But hell, I'll give them a week,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I want to go to another video. This is coming from LA. Take a look. This is on, I think, 3rd in Hollywood. Cops will argue that every violent action that they had to take was 100% necessary. I want you to see this video of the coordinated assault on people who are just walking away from an area they've been told to leave. So I know that, you know, comparisons to Handmaid's Tale happen all the time these days, but that is almost exactly like a scene out of it. Now, yes, they were using less lethal weapons, but we're going to show you what those less lethal weapons can do. They massed as a group, a call was put out to charge, and they began charging at unarmed protesters who were moving the opposite direction, firing their weapon as they did it, indiscriminately. Not one individual assaulted us, threw a Molotov cocktail, we had to take him down, whatever excuse they might use. It was just begin firing, hit people with these rubber bullets, disperse the crowd. It was like, that was a wartime effort you saw there, a charge on an area.
You know, I mean, yeah, we like to imagine this happens elsewhere, and it doesn't. It happens in the U.S., and we still call ourselves a democracy. And I would like us to imagine, you know, if we can hold out some hope for what democracy might actually look like one day, which is that police would be protecting protesters. Now, I don't mean they have to agree with them, but I mean marshaling, right? In all of these protests, in a lot of protests, if folks have been to them, there's always marshals that come from the organizations themselves because they protect the line. They make sure people are, like, you know, not walking out of it so they won't get arrested accidentally. There are National Lawyers Guild volunteers. There's a huge amount of machinery from activists because they know they get brutalized. I'm not sure how much that was able to be activated this weekend. But once again, like, there are countries where actually the right to protest is protected, and police will make sure that, yeah, if there's anything that's out of hand, people aren't getting stomped on or trampled, or if they need water, whatever. No, we have police officers like grabbing activists' water, stealing their water,
Yep.
And
Destroying
back to the rubber bullets, destroying their water. The other, back to the rubber bullets, National Guard in Minneapolis. I'm sure folks have seen this video, enforcing the curfew. So they're walking down the middle of the road, the National Guard, and folks are filming them from their porches, from their property.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear an officer, whomever, say, "Light them up." Some straight up Iraq, Afghanistan, war on terror language. Light them up. And they begin spraying rubber bullets at people standing in their own homes.
Standing in their homes.
Yeah.
Like, they're told to go to their homes. They go to their homes and they start attacking them in their homes. And
Right, because they have to be inside.
Exactly. And it can be so casual. I saw a video of a Vice correspondent who was face down on the pavement, holding up his press badge above his head. Cops walking past him. One cop walks up next to him, looking around, just points his thing of tear gas at him, or pepper spray, and shoots him right in the face with it on the ground. Then just walks off. Doesn't even care. I saw another. It was there was one of their, like, little wagons where they all, you know, all the cops are hanging off the sides. Bunch of cops, maybe 15 or whatever, on this one vehicle, and someone's filming from the sidewalk with a thing, maybe 20 yards away. And all the cops are armed, and one of the cops just points his gun casually at the crowd, fires. Like, they're not trying to disperse the crowd. The people filming are not doing anything. Just points his gun, fires off a rubber bullet, hits the guy's phone. You can see it because that's the video, and shatters it, spraying glass and metal at the guy.
And
just totally
yet
casual
the president
violence.
calls the protesters thugs. Interesting.
Exactly. And by the way, so we've been talking about the rubber bullets. We're supposed to pretend that, oh, it's rubber bullets, so it's fine. You can shoot people however you want. I want to alert you, this is brutal, but one of the individuals who was hit by a rubber bullet tweeted, and you can see the gore. Now, she was lucky that hit her on her forehead and only did a terrible amount of damage. A couple inches down and she would have lost her eye, as multiple people have through the course of this weekend's protests. Yeah. This is what their non-lethal weapons do.
Well, and they're also using them wrong. I mean, I absolutely do not believe in these non-lethal weapons at all. At this point, I don't believe that police officers should be armed with guns or these weapons. No, but they're using them wrong. You're supposed to aim a rubber bullet at the ground and then it bounces back. That's the sort of the idea, right? And it hits people in the legs. Like, I wish. I mean, at this point, you're like, man, if all the police officers who've gunned down, an unarmed black person were using rubber bullets, maybe we'd be in a better place then. But I actually think it's really interesting that, and that all folks, people who are in solidarity with the black community are now getting a taste of what the black community faces on a daily basis, because protest is criminalized the same way that blackness and poverty are also criminalized.
Yeah. They should know how to use them. They shouldn't be able to use them, but if they're going to use them, they should know how to use them. But they're not, like, we didn't spend billions of dollars arming these people up like they're doing their patrol in Fallujah for them to not use the weapons. And many people have pointed out, there was one tweet, like, why does every cop across the country look like an Avenger? And we had nurses fighting coronavirus with trash bags as protective equipment. Like, we had no resources to give to help out. No coordination, no aid. But all of a sudden, man, they are ready to defend Beverly Hills.
There you go. We have the money. I mean, the silver lining is, hey, we've got masks. They're there. They're just going to the wrong people. So, redistribute it. And that's why, once again, budgets are coming in. I know the city of LA has its budget due today, and the police budget doubles budgets for anything else. So that's on us to tweet at, call, and take action, because the money's there, y'all. Money's been there. I know this whole time we've been like, wait a minute, aren't we a first world country? Yeah, it just goes into our military.
Yeah, and again, on the non-lethal weapons, like, we just take it as, oh yeah, no, you use tear gas. That's just what you do. No, you internationally, you can't use tear gas.
Yeah.
It's a war crime because it's a chemical weapon, but we are more lenient on weapons deployed against our own citizens than we would be internationally. Although, to be fair, I have a feeling Donald Trump would not care about those international prohibitions either. And there are also lies going around that, I think it was in San Diego, it might have been, they said that the protesters had leaf blowers loaded with bleach to spray on the cops when everyone knows that the leaf blowers are used to disperse the tear gas to protect the people in the crowd. Are you familiar with Shivala Madlina? She co-host of my docuseries. She has impaired vision in one eye because of tear gas that was deployed against her when she was doing reporting in Israel. It is less lethal, still a weapon, still can maim people, still can kill people. People have been killed by rubber bullets, and hold on to your butts, because we're like a couple days into this thing. I want to show you one other video, and again, like, I have a Pocket account. It's where you save links or whatever that I make rundowns from. I love Pocket. My Pocket was just dozens and dozens and dozens of things that I saw, but I can't use everything, but I have to show you this. It wasn't just the police that were trying to turn their vehicles into deadly weapons throughout the weekend. You probably also saw this when a tanker truck on a highway came this close to killing potentially dozens of people.
Right, okay. So Eric Shalou, once again on the ground. And Eric, we are looking at the people, thousands there on the ground. What's happening
seem to
right
be
now?
dispersing
They're
right now.
moving across. What's going on?
I'm not certain what.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
A giant.
Oh my gosh.
This is very dangerous.
Oh my gosh. Oh, this is bad. Right, okay. So Eric Shalou, once again on the ground. And Eric.
So, this road was supposed to be blocked off. The protesters were peacefully blocking the highway. We don't know exactly what happened. It appears that it went around the barricades so that it could go onto the highway. And that person hit the gas, seeing in front of him hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of protesters. And he was dragged out of the vehicle. And thankfully, no one was hurt other than the driver, who has now been arrested, because that driver, and the police who are just running their vehicles into crowds, that's ISIS's tactic internationally over the past few years. They have learned it from international terrorists to use their weapon. Like that guy in the tanker, That's what he was trying to do. He was willing, when he stepped on the gas, to potentially kill hundreds of people.
And it's happened, right? Unite the Right rally and
Yeah.
Heather Heyer being mowed down by a white supremacist in his car. It's happened before.
Yeah, it has. Now we're gonna turn to some other aspects on this in a little bit. I did want to let you know though that in addition to all the violence that you saw there, we also have at least, and this is the most initial of estimates, 4,100 people arrested over the past few days, including nearly 1,000 in LA, over 700 in New York. I mean, these numbers are probably nothing compared to the actual number, but there are organizations that you can support that are providing bail and lawyers, in some cases working pro bono to help out these individuals. That is one way that you can potentially help if you would like. Okay, now let's see what people are saying. Wilson B, thank you for your super chat. Alleycat K says, have you seen the newest dig by Barbara Streisand? No, is it a comment about this? I'm not actually familiar with that. I apologize.
Must look up.
I will. Let's see what
The
Barbara
Dig
Streisand.
by Barbara Streisand.
I
I hope it's
don't
in
know.
song form.
I don't know. I don't see it. Feel free to let us know more. Virtual fundraiser for Joe Biden? I assume that's not what it is. But maybe. Gina Jones says, hope you're doing well and watching on both YouTube and Twitch. Thank you, Gina. Knowledge Gizmo says, hold our leaders accountable. No talk. Action. Hashtag BLM. Karanig says, happy Pride Month. Happy Pride Month, everyone. Again, saw its beginnings in a riot. Because sometimes that is what is required for change to come. Chub Toad says, we need 2+ hours of TDR today, please. I can't necessarily promise that. I'm going to be doing interviews following the show, but we'll see what we can do. Emily Phillips says, Veronica Rodriguez, a black EMT in Minneapolis, died this morning in ICU from police brutality after providing aid to protesters. Say her name. Yes, so we are beginning to see some individuals who have been killed. There was a pregnant woman who was, I think, hit by a car and was killed, I believe, by police. Some of these, we don't have the details necessarily, but you're going to see more of this. Amanda says, some of that luxury crap costs more than my rent. Yes. Charlie says, happy birthday, Zane. Zane had his birthday over the weekend. Happy birthday, Zane. And let's see. Jess Ortega, hashtag TDR Live, said, I keep seeing videos where I can't tell who is local PD and who's the guard called in. It's terrifying. Patrick Maney says, wow, that video was powerful. It shows the cops starting the violence against people that are showing no aggressiveness. Everyone should see that video, as well as many, many others. And then, unfortunately, many of these incidents will be lost in the flood, honestly. But yeah, and we're seeing, like, we're not even taking time out to do a full story about the fact that a guy took a machete and tried to kill protesters and was beaten. The guy with his bow.
Oh, wow.
Like, he's been arrested, thankfully, at the very least. And not to mention all of the evidence that there have been, there are black protest organizers trying to get some white protesters to stop doing things that are going to be taken out not on those individuals. There's clear cases of cops. It seems like planting and setting fires to cars, starting fires, weird things with bricks being planted in locations. There's so much stuff going on. There seems to be some evidence that InfoWars set fire to a homeless man's belongings and then filmed it to say that the protesters have been doing that. A lot of this, it's impossible to verify for sure, but the entire thing is just a disgusting, tragic mess made worse by virtually everyone in a position to make it better.
Agreed.
Okay. Speaking of which, let's turn to this now. You can be forgiven for forgetting that we actually have a president and a government. It hasn't seemed like that for some time, but as the situation in America has gotten worse and worse, we do technically have a president. He has briefly, over the past few days, stuck his head up to comment on what was going on. But far from being any kind of unifier, he's only made it worse. Donald Trump tweeted, this was back on May 30th, great job last night at the White House by the U.S. Secret Service. They were not only totally professional, but very cool. I was inside, watching every move, and couldn't have felt more safe. Well, that's what's important. They let the protesters scream and rant as much as they wanted, but whenever someone got too frisky or out of line, that's how he speaks about people organizing to push for their rights, they would quickly come down on them hard, didn't know what hit them, saying at some point, if they had breached the fence, they would have been greeted by the most vicious dogs and most ominous weapons I have ever seen. That's when people would have been really badly hurt, at least. Something he talks about as if he is thirsty for it, not as, a tragedy to be avoided. So he was sitting in the White House as protests were going on around it and threatening to unleash the most ominous weapons. I'm sure in a few hours he's going to pretend that he wasn't talking about killing the protesters, and right-wing media is going to pretend that they don't understand why anyone thought that's what he was implying. But that's what he's doing. When the looting starts, the shooting starts, wasn't clear enough, he's talking about letting loose dogs on people pushing for civil rights and unleashing military weapons on them.
Yeah, he's such a classless nerd, you know? He's just a nerd for violence and mayhem. That's what he's doing. That's all. He's just like a fanboy of people being brutalized, and he's live tweeting it from the safety and comfort of the White House.
Yeah.
But hey, I'm really happy that people have taken these demonstrations to the White House, because he is also the emblem of the kind of white supremacist mentality that unfortunately undergirds a lot of police departments in this country and drives the dehumanization of Black Americans when they are confronted by police on some really stupid, dumb thing, like a $20 counterfeit, right?
Exactly.
And so, good. We should be taking this fight to all of our elected officials and especially to the president.
Exactly. And I guess, although I have tried, I've kept 1% of my brain functioning constantly from the very beginning of his term, just focused on don't allow yourself to allow things to now seem normal that should not be. But even it's like, oh yeah, no, the president is tweeting that he might start firing on protesters. And that's the 10th biggest story of the weekend, is that he's doing that. Unleash the dogs, unleash the weapons. He's happy and sitting there. And honestly, the reason that can be a little bit normalized is because the more ominous thing for me is watching more and more people, regular Trump supporters, people, again, in the center who have a greater devotion to things being sort of quiet and seeming normal rather than being just. And people in the media who have apparently decided, no, fascist police state where we're murdering people in the streets. There are worse things, I guess. And isn't it a quick turn from right-wing media spent the last 2 months pretending that, like, dictators in office are taking away our rights, they're trampling our rights, it's a police state in Michigan, to immediately, no, cops should be killing people. They should really start shooting protesters in the streets. That was like a turn on a dime there. And not even commented on by the people making the turning.
Yeah. I mean, I would just ask everyone who is upset at some of the property destruction or fire being started, or some of the minority of protesters who turned and became violent with or without infiltrators, because we know that is real, both from the police side and potentially from the extreme right. But ask yourself, who has more of a responsibility right now to be peaceful, right? Is it the police? Is it the president? Or is it someone who's out of work who has not gotten a $1,200 stimulus check, or even with that can't make rent, whose landlord is bothering them to make payment, who doesn't have health care? Like, who has the responsibility to keep the peace? Who has the responsibility to show restraint right now? I'm going to go with the people whose tax dollars we fund, right? I'm going to go with the police. I'm going to go with the president. So if you're more upset at someone lighting fire to an Adidas store or a palm tree, than you are about the president inciting violence, that's on you.
Yeah. Yeah, and the media, like, it's been there's so many parts of this to talk about, but the CNN has been, the media, by the way, is being targeted in a way that many of these reporters who are being attacked by cops on the streets have said they've reported from war zones around the world and not been targeted in this way, as if by design, they are being attacked, and that's probably what it is. But even then, like, CNN's chyrons and headlines are all looters and stuff like you guys are on the streets, you see the violence being directed at these protesters, and still their knee-jerk reaction is to side with the narrative of those in power trying to crush this rebellion. And so, yeah, that's what we're seeing.
And it makes sense. I mean, we all know that, you know, after in the later years of the Obama administration, there was investigations opened into local police departments from the Justice Department. That was scrapped. And then there also was sort of the blocking of new weaponry going to police departments because all of the stuff that we manufacture to be used abroad eventually comes back home to roost. All that violence and militarization comes back to our communities. And of course, the Trump administration say, nope, game on. We're not blocking any of those shipments of, you know, whatever lethal / non-lethal, you know, I don't know, poop your pants gun, because there's a poop your pants gun.
There is.
Or it's like a sound. Like whichever one of those, like we want it, right? So again, all of these things and struggles are connected. And when I say we're giving too much to the military, I'm including the police.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, the investigations that have been going on for a long time into the infiltration or just open acceptance of white supremacists in police departments and the military is something that as a country, we like saw the news and we're like, that's probably fine. Let's not worry about that. That's not going to cause issues later on, and of course continues to. And you can see that. I mean, we can go quickly to this. You guys have all probably seen this. Yeah, so that's a police officer covering the protest, flashing a white power symbol. But as I tweeted, probably doing it ironically. It's probably just a joke. That's all.
Yeah,
and when
you're saying everything's okay.
Oh, totally. And when the cops tear down the American flag and put up a flag of veneration of cops above all else, at least they're being clear about what it is they're defending at that point.
Yeah. I mean, one other thing I was just going to mention is that we understand that there are very strong police unions that resist any kind of reform, and they have for years. And they should be targets of our pressure too, especially, for example, they resist things like mental health checks. Police officers saying, no, I don't need to check, you know, and I'm not saying that they're unfit to serve or anything, but imagine being a cop is hard. Yeah, it is hard. Wouldn't you think that a basic mental health check or like visiting a therapist regularly, having someone check in on you, that would be good. We would want that for the armed arbiters of justice who patrol our streets every day. But no, the police unions make sure that they don't get that, just as I would say you should have a check on, hey, does this officer have white supremacist tendencies? Because that's not good. We should root that out. Yeah. But of course, I'm sure a union would be against that as well. Yeah. At least a police union.
So let me turn to one other aspect of this, because I find it to be funny at the very least, and in these dark times we need to be able to smile. Donald Trump was busy live tweeting what was going on. He's done literally nothing to solve the issues that are being protested about substantively. He's done nothing to try to bring people together. He's of course unable to do so, and in fact physically unable to do so, because he spent a portion of the weekend hiding in a bunker. Hundreds of protesters were gathering outside White House gates, shouting curses at him, throwing bricks and bottles in some cases. Nervous for his safety, Secret Service agents abruptly rushed the president to the underground bunker used in the past during terrorist attacks. Now, this, of course, was not a terrorist attack. It was justifiably outraged Americans outside of the gates. But this guy, the alpha male to end all alpha males, the macho man who literally plays the song Macho Man at his rallies, hid in the bunker. No word yet on whether he listened to Macho Man in the bunker, but that's where he was.
We can assume.
Alpha male.
This was like Trump's 9/11.
Yeah.
Trump's 9/11 is just people being rightfully mad at him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, if he were capable of reading, he would have just continued reading a children's book as the towers went down. But that's not possible for him, so instead he fled down to a bunker that I'm going to assume was catered by McDonald's. And so what I'm interested in is, what is the feeling in the White House about what he should do? Because, I mean, we had He almost took us to war in Iran. Then there was a pandemic, a death toll of 103,000 and counting, 40 million unemployed. Now there are protests around the country. Seems like maybe at some point he would do something. Well, we have some word from inside the administration of what he's thinking. Trump and some of his advisors calculated that he should not speak to the nation because he had nothing new to say and had no tangible policy or action to announce yet, according to a senior administration official. Evidently not feeling an urgent motivation Sunday to try to bring people together, he stayed silent. He later yelled, "I'm assuming about the reports that he was in the bunker." He tweeted, "Fake news." There's no other details, so I can't say for sure that's why. But he did add, helpfully, law and order. I don't know exactly what that's supposed to mean. He also retweeted people, including one tweet from whoever this is, saying, "This isn't going to stop until the good guys are willing to use overwhelming force against the bad guys."
What?
The president retweeted that because he apparently agrees with that.
Who are the good guys again? I'm lost.
I'm assuming it's the people running over protesters. If I had to guess,
Oh,
that's
right,
who I
right,
think the good guys are. We have a little bit from Cecilia Vega on ABC this week, I believe this morning, on sort of talks inside of the White House about what he might do.
Yeah, George, we're hearing that there's a growing divide inside the West Wing among top aides. You've got these two camps on one side, among others, Jared Kushner, who are wondering what the political benefit is of having the president address the nation from the Oval Office. They wonder whether this will do more harm than good. Frankly, they know he's not a huge fan of giving the Oval Office address, that he's made mistakes in them in the past. The White House has had to kind of scramble to play cleanup on that. On the other hand, though, you've got others in the West Wing, including the Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who are strongly encouraging him to do this because they say that he could really appear to be a strong leader, to be a unifier, a healer at this time of great crisis in our country. And frankly, there's a belief that this could help him with the African American vote during an election year.
There's a strong feeling about that. Was it a feeling accompanied by a great deal of alcohol? Because how could you think that would be the outcome? It's not her. She's reporting on...
I know, but
What?
I don't blame her for reporting on that, but the way she said it gave it just way too much credence.
Yeah.
That this is the time that he could really speak to the African American community. Oh man.
Can you imagine what that address is going to be like when it finally comes?
Of course. We know exactly what Antifa. The thugs.
We're gonna get to Antifa. Don't worry. Did you read, by the way, about his call with the brother of George Floyd? And
no, I did not.
The brother was saying, "I was trying to get him to understand our concerns, and he wouldn't let me speak. He just kept cutting me off." Like, and people don't remember. There's so many stories that people don't remember. One of our soldiers died in Africa 3 years ago, I think, and he got on a call with the widow. And the call ended with a public feud between him and the widow, because he couldn't just call someone up and lend a little bit of empathy to the situation. You think he's going to unify people? And that the end result of his address is improved relations between Trump and the black community in America? Who's stupid enough to think that? It's got to be Miller.
You have to listen. Listening distinguishes humans from sociopaths, right? Like, and so just, is there, what can we all do in this horrible time? Listen, just generally listen, and especially, and F the president and all that, but like, listen to Black leadership, listen to Black-led organizations, Movement for Black Lives. What are they calling for? What are they asking? But once again, everything Trump does is a beautiful example of what to never teach your children and what to teach them. And that is just listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, like I'm just waiting for Biden to speak, and he's going to ruin it. But look, he has been going around the past couple of days and meeting with people, and that's the most I reasonably could expect from him. That's more than what you're getting out of Trump. Anyway, let's turn to a slightly different angle. We had the weekend, and it was obviously devastating in a number of different ways. The sheer brutality, constantly visible. What's going to come this week? I can't say for sure, but we do have some idea of what Donald Trump has been advising governors around the country to do. Here's the initial results of a call he had this morning with governors. President Trump apparently unloaded on them, saying, quote, "You have to dominate. If you don't dominate, you're wasting your time. They're going to run over you. You're going to look like a bunch of jerks. You have to dominate. Washington was under very good control, but we're going to have it under much more control. We're going to pull in thousands of people. You've got to arrest people. You have to track people. You have to put them in jail for 10 years, and you'll never see this stuff again." So you have to, again, these are this is the conservatives, very cautious about government spying and overreach and executive power and all of that. Wants to track all these protesters and start locking people up for 10 years for protesting. Yep. Remember how many pardons has he given to people for like lying to the FBI and stuff like that? No, he thinks that protesters need to go to jail for a decade. That will teach them. That will solve this. So we have an idea of what his unifying blueprint looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. He's like, hey, look at North Korea, look at Egypt. You know, why can't we be more like them? He wishes that that the shred of democracy that we still hold on to, that idea, he wishes we would have just obliterate that forever. Mm-hmm. And I really think that this is a moment, once again, and a lesson for us that this country could head in that direction. And we're at this crossroads right now. And I think what we're seeing right now is obviously, once again, how horribly unfairly Black Americans are treated by the police in this country and how they are criminalized. Take that and just expand it to all people, right? And double it. Obviously, if we are in an actual dictatorship, Black Americans will still be the ones suffering the brunt of it. But he wants more militarism, not less. Yeah. And I think this is just a crossroads for us to really think about, hey, with 4 more years, maybe he could actually get it. Maybe he could do it.
Yeah. Yeah. If he didn't have to worry about running for re-election, if he has apparently decided that his only way to win re-election is to turn out 99% of his base by letting them know explicitly that he is in favor of race-based mass murder, effectively.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, we're not supposed to say that. We're supposed to be polite and pretend that that's not what the movement is, that it is not entirely founded on white supremacy, but that's what it is. Or at the very least, that's what he thinks it is. Look at what he's doing. Look at what he's saying. You can't draw any other conclusion than that. And so I guess looking ahead, because the curfews are continuing, the protests are going to continue. I'm curious, Francesca. I mean, what do you think? What is the situation going to be by the time we do our show together next Monday? Will we have had, militia members open fire on a crowd? Will we have 2 dozen people who've been killed by police? By that point, we already have a few.
God, I really hope not. But I do think that protests will continue, and not just petering off, random looting, but real nonviolent protests that, again, have been the majority of the things we've seen, and those are going to continue. I know the movement for Black Lives is calling for a week of action. I think that action will absolutely continue. I think you're going to see the rubber hitting the road. We are at a moment, especially because of this pandemic, especially because we see the machinery of the police state and we see the money that is there. We're at this, and it's an election year. Mm-hmm. We are at a crossroads. This is a moment where I actually think we could get, let's be real, even the most minimal police reform would be good, would be better. Even just protection of peaceful protesters would be good. One city. All right. Yes, I want the whole pie. I feel you, and I hear everyone who's like, nah, shut it all down. But we're at a moment, I think there is a real opening here, no matter what happens. In November, God, I can't even say that. No, it definitely matters what happens in November. But I do hope that in a week, there is continued pressure on police departments to actually make some real reforms and to arrest the 3 officers who were implicated in this murder. Yeah. This is what the Minneapolis protesters are demanding, and what people around the world are demanding. But what about you? What do you think?
I mean, look, I'm very worried that the next time the tanker is going to go through the crowd. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that if the cops had virtually no restraint a day or two into the protests, knowing that they're being filmed. That's the thing we always have to remember. They know that what they're doing is being filmed, and they're still doing it after 5 more days of this. What are they going to do then? What restraint will be left after that? And in terms of the goals, I mean, it's not up to me. And, I would say we need to, in the same way that after, like decades of civil strife and war, there will be, truth and reconciliation committees set up for sort of a rebirth. I think that we need to finally acknowledge that the entire American philosophy on policing and law enforcement has been abusive and broken from the very beginning. Broken from the point of view of the people who are abused, not from the system. It's set up and it's worked very well from their point of view. And it needs to be wound down and restarted. Learning lessons from policing and law enforcement in countries around the world that don't have these sorts of problems, that don't militarize their police and load them up in Humvees and, ARs and things like that. If current cops can pass the mental health checks, and if they're not tied to white supremacist organizations and things like that, then they can be retrained and they can join. That's what we should be aiming for, is a fundamental rebooting of law enforcement in America. Because the thing is, if we don't get that, then maybe we'll see a slight reduction in violence. But we know what these police departments are like. We know their ability and capacity to protect their own and to fight against any reforms.
I love that. I think a rebooting of the police is a really, really good way to think about it.
Mm-hmm. I hope.
Start anew.
Okay, we got a couple more stories to get to. Let's just briefly jump back into the super chats and see what's going on Twitter and in Twitch. Let's see. Jess Ortega had tweeted us at hashtag TDR Live saying, I didn't know what was non-lethal other than taser and spray. Had no idea about this. Wow, I think talking about the rubber bullets. And the thing is, of course, tasers kill people too. And the spray can maim people as well. Okay, whoa, there's a lot of super chats. Derek Bain says, had to click through a Trump ad against socialism to watch the stream today, which is something. You're telling me. PragerU ads on TDR. That's what should happen. Trendy as Dabbers says, isn't learning and teaching your audience gardening more important than covering politics? Why do you think politics still matter? Well, I mean, I would say I've tried gardening and I've not been very successful. So it's sort of just putting your attention where you think you can have some good or do some
I'm
good.
on the, supporting community gardens and local CSA boxes.
Yep. 100%.
Do that.
Yeah.
We can all do that.
Yeah, and we value this. My wife used to work for a nonprofit that helped set up community gardens in areas that desperately needed reclamation of green space. Chubtoad says, is there a link for this video clip? I think referring to the Jordan Ewell clip. If you go to Jordan Ewell's Twitter account, you will find it. Just look for the video with 40 million views. AJ Bamforth, and by the way, and a million others too. AJ Bamforth says, David McAtee shot and killed by LMPD and Kentucky National Guard last night in Louisville. His body lay there for hours. I hadn't even heard about that. Jesus. Warning out of this world, Francesca Fiorentini is beyond beautiful. I'd like to thank your mom for having you. This country needs healing.
Wow.
Thank
I
you.
Want those $5.
Thank you. No, they're mine. Well, not even mine. They're the channels. I don't have access to it.
I think they're my mom's. We've established.
Yeah, actually. Okay, so we're gonna Venmo your mom after this. Miss we don't have to be specific about why. Miss Callie says, destruction started by Boogaloo Boys, right wing. It's a significant concern as well as undercover cops who are clearly a part of this. Emily Phillips says, police chief in Green Bay, Wisconsin marched with the crowd. Other departments need to take notes. One officer even provided aid to a protester who fell. Yes. So, again, none of this is up to me. I want to be very clear about that. I like when they do that, but that's not reform. It's better than brutality, but that's not necessarily the same thing as, cutting the corrosive ties with police unions that stop any reform whatsoever. These perverse relationships with DAs and things like that. That's better than a knee on your neck, but it's not the same thing as reform.
We are beyond that. We're beyond coffee and donuts with a cop. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think the cops have to, and the police departments have to show that they are willing to make reforms and make real changes. And then maybe this is like stage 4 is let's sit down and chat with a cop.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like there a lot of other stuff needs to happen first before you even get to the table.
Yeah. French Fry says, this breaks my heart. I can't believe the complete disregard by police for human life. It's sickening. Yeah. Like I mean, we see violence all the time, obviously, but when you are behind the wheel of an SUV and there's a bunch of people in front of you and you make the decision to hit the gas, like the unthinking anonymous violence, like I'm willing to kill people and I don't even have to know who they are. I'm willing to kill whoever. Some people have been fired. There have been cops fired, thankfully. A few. Not nearly enough. Punch Drunk Savage, thank you for your super chat. And Rogelio Hernandez says, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. Yes. Kathy Sates says, I've been crying all weekend. Yeah, it's been impossible. Wow, I'm gonna have to catch up on these super chats later. You guys have been understandably vocal about what you've seen, but we'll try to catch up in the end. I don't want to keep Francesca forever, so I'm going to try to get through the next 2 stories, and then I will read some more. Let's jump to this. Here's news. Donald Trump is striking out against who he thinks is behind all of the chaos around the country, announcing over the weekend that the United States of America will be designated Antifa as a capital T terrorist, capital O organization, in a tweet that is technically a sentence, but means nothing. It has meaning, and that meaning is ominous, but it means absolutely nothing to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. Francesca, feel free to describe some of the reasons why that makes no sense.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, can he do that? Maybe he can. I do know that when you designate someone a terrorist, you can then charge them and sentence them to many, many more years in prison. I know that some environmentalists who have taken to property destruction in the past have been sentenced to like 30 years in prison because they burned down like a car dealership, did not hurt anybody. So when you start to add the label terrorist, yeah, I mean, I think it is significant.
Yeah.
As obviously as random and as a decision that, as I'm sure that was, just spur of the moment made on Twitter.
How many minutes before he hit send do you think he had the thought to do it? Do you think he thought about it for 5 minutes?
No, but I do think there's a little bit of it. Like, I would love to get access to the group chats where Trump's like, I'm doing it. 5, 4, 3.
That would be something. So a few issues with Antifa being a terrorist organization. It's not an organization.
Right.
It doesn't have a membership. It doesn't have a leadership. It doesn't have buildings you can raid. Like, what do right wingers? First of all, how do they live with themselves? But what do they think is happening right now? That like Antifa, like the evacuation of Hoth, they're like getting all their equipment together and like dispersing. It's not an organization.
No.
It's just people who are against fascism and believe in direct action. The vast, vast majority of which probably don't know more than a couple of people who are similarly ideologically inclined. That's
a very good point.
It's just people who are against fascism. Some probably have the label anti-fascist, in their mind. Many are just people who are justifiably against fascism. It doesn't mean anything.
There is, yeah, exactly.
Because it is by its very nature such an amorphous thing, that is almost convenient for them. Because if Antifa doesn't have a membership, then anyone can be Antifa. And
if they have a mask on.
Exactly, if they have a mask.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah.
We're all wearing masks.
By the way, everyone should identify as being against fascism. If you do not, I have significant problems with you. But prepare, if you protest, to be an official member of Antifa. because they are going, if this goes beyond it being a tweet, the way it will go beyond that is to be deployed against anyone and everyone that they want to lock up or send to Gitmo or whatever. And they're right-wingers salivating right now over the possibility of protesters being sent to Gitmo, literally saying that.
Can I just say, like, I definitely don't, I don't condone, and I'm not like into every tactic that the amalgamous sort of Antifa protesters like take up at every protest. But I will say that Antifa has been, and not the organization, but people who go out, you know, to the streets and, you know, whatever, black clad, etc. They've been on the front lines against white supremacist organizing for like 40 years now, 30, like since like maybe not that long, but like for decades, they have been there at every time some extreme right-wing organization or Nazi organization wants to parade or have a protest or whatever it is. Antifa is usually the ones who are there. Now, we're more used to like coming out against Antifa or coming out against fascism now under Trump because of things like Unite the Right and because of the ways that fascism has been emboldened and those Nazi organizations have been emboldened and actually come out from their whatever man caves under their moms' homes, right? But like Antifa has been there. So I would just like a little bit of a hats off to Antifa for kind of having their finger on the pulse of where these white supremacist organizations are and standing up to them. And also, I just want to clarify, they're not all white boys. All right. And that's another misconception, is that Antifa and the people who like do all these tactics and believe in direct action, that they're all like white boys, and they're not. All right. And so just out of respect to them, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. No one should be erased, especially when they're trying to protect our freedoms. One more problem with the tweet is ACLU pointed out terrorism is an inherently political label, easily abused and misused. We know that. Let's be clear. There is no legal authority for designating a domestic group as a terrorist organization. Any such designation would raise significant due process and First Amendment concerns. As many people have pointed out, the KKK is not designated as a terrorist organization. You know, militias that have blown up federal buildings and stuff like that, or murdered, abortion doctors have not been labeled as terrorist organizations, even though they use the tactics of it. And this is not a situation where I've seen some people tweeting, well, then they should also designate the KKK. No, we don't designate these domestic organizations as terror organizations. As of right now, there is no legal way to do that. So let's bear that in mind. Another way that it's nonsensical, but also dangerous. Okay, let's briefly switch things up and do a little update, Francesca, of a story that was talked about in the show not long ago. You might have remembered Memorial Day weekend, when people in the Lake of the Ozarks just had themselves a nice party, a pool party, and some of us party crashers, we were worried that might have consequences, and it might result in people getting coronavirus, because the people doing the partying weren't socially distancing, they weren't wearing masks, and it turned out lurking amongst them were people who were positive for coronavirus. News is now reporting a person who partied in the Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri area on Memorial Day weekend has tested positive for coronavirus and was possibly infectious over the holiday weekend. The Boone County resident visited multiple bars on May 24th and 25th, according to the Camden County Health Department. They developed illness on Sunday and were possibly infectious before them. The person, who was not identified, also went to Shady Gators and Lazy Gators, those are different places, and Buffalo Wild Wings, because of course. So this person was not only sick potentially with coronavirus at that point, but was also really getting around, going
Just
to
bar
multiple
hopping.
bars, like seriously, and then coming back to Shady Gators later on. And I get it, it sounds fun. But if you were at one of those places, you need to know that there were potentially people there and potentially spreading coronavirus. This is not purely hypothetical anymore. The sickness is coming from inside the room.
Yeah.
I doubt you're surprised. Honestly.
Not surprised at all. I'm just like, yeah, of course. We all knew that was going to happen. And I get it. I think we're going to start to see this summer people who want to go to pool parties. They want to hang. They want to pretend. And no matter what your political leanings are, you're going to want to pretend that everything is okay. And it's still not. This virus is still out there. It's still killing people. It's still asymptomatic.
Yep.
And I also think we're going to see, I mean, like there's part of me that's like, I get why you want to go to a pool party. You're going to have to deal with a baby pool in, your front yard for the time being. You can't go out. And yeah, they're going to be like celebrities in private jets going to their like beach vacations. You can't do that. Sorry, you're not a millionaire. And once again, yeah, income inequality is a problem. Get yourself a baby pool.
Exactly. Yeah, so look, those people, like we said, we were scared at the time, didn't have masks, weren't socially distancing. I just want to briefly go back to this photo has been spread quite a bit, 150,000 retweets, from the protests over the weekend, of these protesters marching past this group, having brunch. And as many people noticed immediately, the protesters are virtually all wearing masks. The people at brunch, none of them are. And yeah, that's something that I've definitely noticed, that one of the ways that the protests have right-wingers have tried to disregard them is saying like, oh, you say you care about coronavirus and now you're out in the streets. Virtually all of them are taking it seriously, wearing masks. Yeah, sometimes they can't socially distance, totally true, but they are wearing the masks, which is more than can be said for not only the anti-lockdown protesters from a few weeks ago, but lots of people just going around today, including cops not wearing masks, by the way. Sometimes gas masks for the chemical weapons they're deploying. And let's also mention just briefly, you might remember from about 2 weeks ago when it was announced that Donald Trump was going to be recalling West Point cadets so that he could give a speech to them on June 13th. And when that news was announced, people were worried, well, this seems like a horrible time for you to pack halls with West Point cadets and potentially spread coronavirus amongst them. We now find out that 16 West Point cadets ahead of that speech have tested positive for COVID-19. They're back on campus for that speech, which will come up in 2 weeks. We have, in addition, 71 or more of the 5,000 faculty, staff, and civilians have also tested positive. So, like, we don't do a lot of updates of this sort, and I'm not one of the people who generally is a big fan of telling you so. But in both of these cases, yeah, the concerns were justified. And the potential vectors for coronavirus to continue to be spread are still out there. Obviously, we've got significant problems that we're dealing with in this country. But, like hundreds, if not more than 1,000 people are dying every day from coronavirus still. So just bear that in mind. That problem has not gone away just because we have other problems as well. Yeah. Well, Francesca, that's all the time we have for today.
Well, John.
But I want to thank you.
I'm not leaving.
Okay, well then you can stay. Okay, so turning to let me just really fast go through the super chats and see if there were any targeted directly at you so that you don't miss them, or for you, I guess that's less threatening than at you.
Or for my mom.
Or for your mom. Franklin Sharpslicer had said, "Oh, Fran and John, it's been so long. If I could sing, I'd sing you a song. Monty Python, no singing." Okay, that's funny. Nice reference there. Let's see. Ben Fox said, "The Fran we need in the darkest times. Where are the UN peacekeepers when a nation gasses its citizens in the streets, kidnaps thousands, and imposes martial law?"
I want to be cooed by Costa Rica.
Uh-huh.
If they could just please come in and coup us.
Give us a good cooing, yes.
Yeah. Come in and depose our dictator and then just set up like, just a chill Costa Rican government
Yeah.
with like eco villages and stuff. Isn't that what it's like there?
Name Withheld had said they need to clone Franny now that all regulations have been thrown out the window. Apparently they liked your commentary.
Oh.
Let's see. I just want to make sure. What's that?
Thank you for reading me the comments.
Knowledge Gizmo says, "Thanks, Francesca, for taking us to church. You are the GOAT." Okay. I think that might be all the Francesca specific ones, but I will go through as many of these as I can in just a minute. Please. Anyway, Francesca, I know that you're not going to go, but I am going to click to end the call. So you're done, but thank you for joining us today,
John.
as always.
And can I just shout out, I have a podcast called The Bitchuation Room. Please watch it. It's live every Sunday at 6. You can also watch it on my YouTube channel at Franny Fio. It's on Twitch. It's on Facebook. It's also a podcast, so it'll be out very, very soon. We talked to Maurice Mitchell from Working Families Party about these protests for justice for George Floyd. listen to that. And also, John will be on very soon. I don't have a date for him yet, but he shall be on.
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. No words, action. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. Great to have you here. We'll see you next Monday.
Yay.
Hold on to your butts. God only knows what we're going to be reporting on by then. But we'll talk
Be
to you
well.
soon.
Stay safe.
You too. Okay, everyone, let's catch up a bit on some of the super chats. We are rapidly approaching the point where I may not be able to read all of them, but I will do my best. Melita Peters says, it doesn't help when you have a president. Just this morning calling governors weak and jerks for not arresting the protesters. Yeah, I don't think many will listen, but some of the red state ones might. We'll see. And we've seen brutality in states across the country. I don't think they necessarily need him to spur that on, but it certainly isn't helping. Camp Runamuck says, Commander Bone Spurs hunkering in the bunker. Exactly. Guillermo says, are y'all going to talk about Anonymous releasing evidence that Trump raped children? Yeah, so I saw that. There was a lot of news today. I will continue to follow. Obviously, I think it's understandable that we focused almost exclusively on the protests going on, but I will see that. Look, Anonymous popping back up after 3 years is certainly interesting. I hadn't seen that coming. Tomas says, you want to bet once we examine how many deaths there were above average this year, Republicans will blame violent protesters instead of COVID-19. That's a possibility. Farrell Jane says, Shades of Seattle 1999. Laura, thank you for your thank you. House says, can we rephrase from peaceful to nonviolent protest? I feel like the rancor of righteously angry protesters is too easily co-opted by the fearmongered as not peaceful and thus eminently violent. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I've seen that back and forth quite a bit online. I will follow, what the organizers say. That's generally my approach. Again, it's not about me. Rob Shively says, there's a lot of light being shed on what we already knew was happening. God, man, I hope this is the turning point I need it to be. Agreed. Anna Thomas says, curfew over the weekend in Portland. Everyone was able to go out, stores open, just no protesters. Yeah, that is weird. Similar here. Camp Runamuck says, would you guys let us know if Commander Bone Spurs, hunker in the bunker, seen his shadow when he came out of the bunker this morning? Now, that was fake news, you might have heard. Quick Strike says, I am a POC and I fear that this will spill into my neighborhood. It fills me with a rage I have never known. I hope a revolution is coming soon. Does seem to be spreading. Laura, thank you for your rose, meaning gotten. Adrian says, they're thugs and badges. We need to announce a new training plan for all active officers. And where the F is Biden? Well, look, I don't necessarily have a ton of faith in that area with Biden, although some, because, during Obama there were some moves in the right direction. But he is out there. I mean, he's meeting with people and stuff like that, which is more than I would have expected. And so, credit where credit is due, and nowhere farther than it is due. Name Withheld said, it's really crazy how a gun literally has more rights than a person of color. What kind of witchcraft does Francesca use? She's looking every day. Apparently I missed that one for Francesca, but yes, we do seem to value guns more than human lives much of the time. Brian says, shout out to Genesee County Sheriff for proper de-escalation. Also, there are other departments launching tear gas onto porches. Yes. Loquacious Laura says, the ambulance that took George Floyd away didn't have EMTs pick him up. They were officers in tan uniforms, not EMTs. Please investigate. I had not seen that, but thank you. Brian says, to clarify, tear gas on porches is terrible. I got what your meaning was. Tony says, beam me up, Scotty. I don't know what that means, but thank you for the reference. Todd Welch says, Louisville here. Peaceful protesters have been great, but once the sun goes down, the looters and anarchists come out. What are the cops to do? I mean, in some cases, stop undercover cops from deliberately lighting fires and things like that. That's certainly something that we've seen. And don't escalate the situation and make it far worse. I mean, how many videos have we shown you of them attacking people who are perfectly peaceful? That leads to more chaos. They are in control of that. Ian says, the targeting of press was shocking. Yes. Less so each day, but still, yes. Hiroshi says, Trump is hiding in the basement. Guillermo says, so Anonymous leaks. Yes, and we will be watching. Let's see. Wow, man. The super chats have been off the hook today. Jeez. Tessie says, I lived in LA during Rodney King riots. I'm in San Bernardino now, and last night I saw my city on fire again. We as a country have learned nothing. Yeah, they seem to have learned a little bit about, they've armed cops and trained them in, some of these tactics and things like that. They certainly haven't learned the right lessons. Don Taylor says, Trump is a villain from an 80s movie, bigoted and cowardly. Yeah, we actually watched over the weekend Back to the Future 2. There's a bit of that in there. Chris says, my idea for a protest with back to the White House and flag in front of us, all protesters take a knee while the national anthem is played. You've seen some things like that in cities throughout America. Roderick says, one quote I remember by Dr. King is, quote, "A man can only ride you as long as your back is bent, and I believe that the Democratic Party has permanently bent the American back of minorities." Well, there is certainly suspicion and blame to go around. Jared says, all it takes for evil to win. Good men must not do anything. Also, it's brown noise gun. Oh, yes, in reference to the weapon that we've been talking about. Kevin says, do you think you'll have a TYT at riots live? Well, the trouble for a lot of this live footage has been that the cops are deploying things intended to disrupt the signal and make it more difficult. But it is a possibility. Roderick Williams says, I've said it before, John, my skin is my sin. As a black man growing up in Compton, I've felt the yoke of oppression figuratively and literally. We have no recourse if people of color switched picket signs for Glocks. Thank you. Justin Matthews says, happy Monday. Couldn't watch live today, but wanted to super chat real quick. You do not have to be one of to stand with. Thank you, Justin. Agreed. Loquacious Laura says, George Floyd and cop who murdered him worked security at the same nightclub. Officers in tan uniforms took him away, not EMTs. Investigate, please. Yeah, we actually talked about the overlap in their time there on Friday's show. Certainly suspicious, and I think that'll be part of the investigation that I believe Keith Ellison is now in charge of. Philip says, Trump's spirit animal is an ostrich. That's funny. Brian Barrett says, I think he was watching SVU Law and Order. Maybe when he declared that. Canale Kit says Antifa is now considered a terrorist organization. Again, he doesn't have the legal authority to do that, but I have no doubt that they will do things not in their legal authority. Hiroshi says, hey guys, which nickname for Trump do you like better, Harbinger of Death or Tweety? Well, Biden has settled on Tweety. Harbinger of Death seems more accurate. Dario says, what is the end game in all of this? Yeah, we talked about that a little bit. We will have to see. We'll have to see. Nasia says our entire culture is sociopathic, significant portion of it. Nasilra says, yeah, in the UK, police have only been dangerous by getting too close to people when asking them why they're outside during pandemic. Yeah. Andre Colon, Trevor Noah's piece this weekend was spot on. Everyone should watch with an open mind. As Hispanic, Puerto Rican born in California, administration makes me feel unsafe in US for the first time in my lifetime. Yeah, I've seen some of his stuff and it has been quite good in this area. Chris says, with unemployment so high, being put in jail for 10 years might look good to some people. Perhaps, but let's try to solve both situations. Chub Toad says, Trump needs to walk away like Johnson did in 1968. Dare to dream. TF Cooks, thank you. Duncan, thank you. Lorian says, happy birthday to my kid who turned 17 last Friday, who offered his own money to help rebuild our neighborhood in South Minneapolis. Proud mom here, and you should be. ORs now says, what do you think about Biden telling Don Lemon that Charlemagne goaded him into the you ain't black comment? I mean, I tweeted about it. Not helpful. TF Cook says, the far right has been using the Antifa boogeyman to their advantage. They dress up like them as cover. It appears so. Stefanik says, a guy here in Utah came up to a protest in Salt Lake with a crossbow aimed at protesters. The cops initially refused to arrest him. Such BS. Yeah, it's bad enough that we have cops brutalizing people. We don't need opportunistic sociopaths adding on to it. Franklin Sharp Slicer says, Arlo Guthrie's pause of Mr. Claus. Why do police guys beat on peace guys? Do well this week. All we are saying, give peace a chance. Sorry, I try to stop myself, but the voices say why. Thank you. Feisty Fan says, that new Confederate flag Lincoln Project ad, though. Yeah, I did actually see that. We didn't have room on the show, obviously. There was a lot that we couldn't get to, but yeah, I do track all of those, and I'm sure there'll be more this weekend about his actions over the weekend. Wilson B says, time for an edit. We are the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe. Miss Mythic says, I've been growing a community garden in my backyard and donating to the food banks. It isn't even a drop in the bucket. Gone before I leave church. Well, thank you for trying. MTS, thank you for your thank you. Bruce Martin says, I'm from Louisville and it's been bad there for a long time. We are supposed to be a civil society. We have a long way to go. You and many other cities. Trenius Dabber says, protesters should kneel. Wouldn't that be powerful? They have been in many cases. I mean, it's not necessarily what's being shown on CNN and MSNBC, but there has been quite a bit of that. Duncan Hunter says, I don't think it's that Duncan Hunter, says, again, what about the video of one cop physically stopping another cop while his knee is on an arresting protester? I didn't see that. I did see in, I believe, Seattle, there was another cop kneeling on someone's neck. Way to get the message for that individual. Jason Conlon says the U.S. government is a circus led by a clown, and unfortunately, that's the way some like it. Jeremy, thank you. Uncle Bobby, thank you. Hulkenbreak says we should amend Trump's rule and make it 10 years for anyone who shows up to a peaceful protest with an assault weapon. They'd lose it, but makes sense. May the Outsider says, I live in Brazil, and we had a big Antifa protest clashing against Bolsonaro's supporters yesterday. We may soon see massive protests. Love you guys. The best of luck in Brazil. You're dealing with a massive problem too in Bolsonaro. Obviously. Teresa says, I'm voting in primary in Fort Wayne, Indiana tomorrow. How can I find out who are the progressives before I vote? Yeah, that's a great point. Immediately off the top of my head, Fort Wayne, I don't know. But I would say there are certainly organizations. I mean, there's Justice Democrats, obviously, but there's a lot of other organizations like that sort of are umbrella organizations supporting progressive candidates. That's where I would look. Michelle Thomas says, I need to know who was actually behind the message boards that they say is Antifa planning to wreak havoc at the protests. See, I didn't even see that. But there's a lot of stuff on message boards and a lot of blame to go around in that area. Kurt says, your favorite vegan butthead here. Almost all this suffering comes from taking what's not yours. Labor, sex, lives, milk. Fran and John go vegan. Thank you, Kurtz. Ate quite a bit of fake meat over the weekend, actually. Nikki Dearest says, Morning Joe already blamed protests for second wave. Are they really? Okay, I'll have to look into that. I'm not surprised. You're going to see more of that. Minx says, sending much love and hope from Australia. Thank you, Minx and Australia. Haroom says, John, I will go into debt for the rest of my life if you need an oscilloscope to help identify that St. Paul cop that destroyed that auto parts store. I would love it, but, take care of yourself, man. AJ, thank you. Ryan says, what resources do you recommend to get involved in politics and maybe run? Ryan, well, similar to what I was saying before, there are organizations set up to try to help with that. I mean, there's the Movement School, which is designed to sort of help train activists, but a lot of that training does end up helping in runs as well. Groups like, Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats and things like that. That's one place to look. And certainly taking part in some of these campaigns is a great way to learn sort of the groundwork to eventually go into your own. Jessica, thank you. Miles says, things would calm down if mainstream media covered why people are fed up and protest and just the looting. Also, we don't have a leader to come forward and hold the police accountable. That's true. And that's why we try to point out all of the economic factors tying into it that's being ignored by the media. TF Cook says, wouldn't it be great if we found out that tear gas kills COVID-19? We'd have more than we need to end this pandemic. Fingers crossed, but kind of doubt it. Miles said the mainstream media could start the conversation about police brutality and racism, but as usual, their interests lie elsewhere. Gotta defend property rights. That's their first and foremost. Scoob says, ever read Norco 80? CT author and New York Times bestseller about first-time police were outgunned by bank robbers in rural California. It is rare and started here. I have not. Interesting, though. Okay, and thank you to everybody who's tweeted as well. Obviously, I feel a responsibility to go through as many of the super chats as possible. It's not always going to be possible to go through all of them, but I really tried there. And thank you to everybody who's supported the channel in that way. And, I can only say I hope that Francesca and that this hour has been, helpful in shedding light on what's going on and helping you and us to get through it. We've got, the whole week planned. Stay tuned. Brace for impact. That's all I can say. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.